As the famous Bob Ross said, we don't make happy mistakes, only happy accidents. And today's video is inspired by a happy accident I made when testing a new pattern that I wanted to create for you all. Nothing goes to waste here, so today's pattern is called Happy Canvas. First, you will need 4 2.5" by width of fabric strips in one print, 4 background 1.5" by width of fabric strips, and lastly 2 print strips that are 2.5" by width of fabric. Now you could use a mixture of different jelly roll strips. The only difference is it's going to yield you a very scrappy looking quilt. But next we are going to make a strip set like so, and you will sew all of your strips together to form a 8.5" by width of fabric unit. And a special tip is when you are sewing your strips together, if you have an issue with your strip sets bowing, sew from one side to the other, then with the next strip from the opposite side. And you'll just keep alternating and it will help with the bowing. And of course, try not to stretch your fabric when you are sewing it together. Then you're going to create 2 strip sets. Now that your strip sets are complete, we will trim them down to a 8.5" square, leaving you with a total of 8 quilt blocks, 4 per each strip set. Next, with 4 of those blocks on the wrong side of the fabric, you will draw a 45-degree line from corner to corner with a fabric marking tool. Now be careful when drawing a line over your seam allowances. I usually just skip over them when marking my diagonals. When you draw your next line, you need to pay attention to the fact that your 45-degree lines are going in the same direction. Next, you will place your blocks right side together. Once again, you must ensure that you are laying your blocks with your strips going all in the same direction. Do not make them perpendicular to each other, but once again, they must go in the same direction. You will then sew a 1/4" seam allowance on both sides of the line you drew. Then using a pair of fabric scissors or a rotary cutter, cut on the line you drew, leaving you with a 8" quilt block. And I recommend using a rotary cutter as it is much easier to cut over those seam allowances. Repeat this step until you have made a total of 8 quilt blocks. Once your blocks are complete, you will place them in a layout like so. Then, as always, sew your blocks together to form rows, and lastly, sew your rows together to complete your quilt top. Now, there are many ways to complete this quilt block, but I thought today's video was a happy accident to achieve the same look. Here is what my happy canvas quilt looks like all finished. For the backing, I am using a matching print. Then I'm going with glide threads in the color Mercury for my thread choice. And here is what my quilt looks like all quilted. Happy canvas measures at 15 inches by 30 inches. And to extend this pattern, you'll just have to create another strip set, and each strip set will add 15 inches to your table runner. But if you could please take a moment to hit that like and subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you can be notified for your next amazing quilt project.